Morning, everybody. Hope things are going well for you. Yesterday, well, before I get started, I should tell you there's a couple programming notes. One, tomorrow there will be a presentation. However, that presentation is going to be a recorded presentation for you, as I have a meeting at the high school to discuss what electronic learning will look like going forward. So I'll keep you updated on those things once I know something about it. But we will have this tomorrow. It will be recorded. In a chance to perhaps meet whatever guidelines there are that come out for e-learning, and because it would have been a normal spring break anyway, I will not be doing presentations next week, kind of a spring break week, which is actually fine because we're actually a little bit further ahead than where we would be on the calendar if we were in the physical classroom, because not every day was for a presentation, but that's what I've been doing every day on here. So this gives us a chance to kind of slow down a little, bring back things into perspective with us instead of just chugging and throwing information at you chunk after chunk here. So tomorrow, recorded presentation, not live. You show up here at the same time. It'll start at the same time. It just won't be here to answer your questions. However, excuse me, if you do have questions, you can include them on the chat or email them to me or text them to me, whatever you'd like to do regarding that. And then starting next Monday through next Friday, we will be taking that week off as our spring break week. So just those two programming notes before we get started. Yesterday, we talked about the two big questions you will most likely get. And I'd say with those two, 99.9% chance you'll get those two questions in an interview. And so I spent some time with them. I'm going to go through 3 through 10 here today. And you can see 1 through 2 took a big chunk yesterday. 3 through 10, not going to take as long because they're kind of straightforward, a little more straightforward than what yesterday employers were asking. So we'll go through them, and then we'll talk about ways for you to prepare for that interview. So number 3, what do you know about our company so far? And what they want to know when they ask you this question is, how much do you really know about the company, or are you just here hoping to get a job that you can then leave later? What is your interest in actually working for us as opposed to just working and getting a paycheck? And again, that goes to their bottom line. How much are they going to be invested in you before you decide you're just going to take off and get a new job? So why did you leave your last job? Or why are you thinking about leaving your current job? They want to know, are you a trouble employee? Do you bounce around a lot to places? So if that is the case, let's say you were at your last job for less than a year, and you want to be, maybe you even got fired. That happens in today's world. Then you want to be able to explain it in a professional way, but don't badmouth your previous employer. If you say anything negative about them, then I, as an interviewer here, are thinking, what are they going to say about me that will adversely affect this company? And so be very careful. Plus, it's a small world. You don't know who I know. And, so you don't want to say something about it, you're bad about your manager and then find out if that was my college roommate or something. We're still real close, or he's dating my cousin now or something like that. So, just be very careful, be very professional about what you said. If you got fired, and let's say you did something wrong and you got fired, just say, listen, I made a mistake there. It was a stupid mistake. I learned from it, and I'm trying to move on beyond that and take those lessons on. If they want to, well, what was the mistake? Go, well, I'd really not rather dwell on it because it was an error on my part. Something along those lines. You don't have to, you're not required by law to go into detail or anything. Now, obviously, it's a little bit of a strike against you, but your willingness to treat it professionally will help overcome some of that anyway. And to lie about it and say that it never happened, they're probably going to find out anyway. So it's better that you deal with it up front than them to find out from the side and then think you're lying and you lose all chance. So it's better to have an 85% chance than a 0% chance. Number 4, why did you leave your last job, or why are you thinking about leaving your current job? Okay, I just went over that. I apologize. Number 5, tell me about your experience at, and they'll give you one of your past jobs that's listed on your resume. And this is where you have to know precisely what's on your resume and be prepared for this question so that you can answer it appropriately. Because if you sit there and hem and haw and, oh God, what did I do there? Is it a case of nerves, or is it a case that you're lying? I don't know you. And so it's safer for me to assume that you're probably just lying about the experience. So be prepared to, go over your resume, know what job experience you have on there, and be able to intelligently discuss your experiences in these jobs. Number 6, what experience do you have doing, and then fill in each of the major responsibilities of the job. So it's the same thing as number 5 there. Just be aware of what's on your resume, what you said were your skill sets, and be able to offer verification proof in some way that these are indeed skills that you've learned or mastered throughout your job experience. Number 7, tell me about your strengths. And this is always an easy one. People, what are you good at? And you want to make what you're good at fit into the job and the job description. So, if you're applying for a secretary's job and you're going to be in charge of scheduling, then time management really should be one of your strengths. And you should be able to demonstrate that as a strength by telling a story related to some past experience in there. Is not that you couldn't have made up the story. As an interviewer, I know that. But the more it's rehearsed and the more believable it is, and if it's true, which we want it to be, then it gives some verification that you're actually good at this. And that gives you a point in your favor. Number 8, tell me about a time when, and I should say number 7, let me go back to that real quick. Because the flip side of number 7, tell me about your strengths is, excuse me, tell me about your weaknesses. And this one is always a little bit trickier. There's the old cliche, turn a strength into a weakness. And so what you get a lot of time in interviews is people going, sometimes I just care too much. I just, I work too hard. It's like, okay, is that really a weakness, or are you just being kind of funky here and trying to make it sound like it's a weakness? And it's like kind of cliche. Everybody has done it at one point. But my advice to you when they ask what is your greatest weakness is not to twist a strength, but actually identify something that you really need to bone up on, that you need to get better on to be a complete person, because everybody has a weakness. And what I want to know as an employer is, are you self-aware enough to go, okay, this is where I'm weak and this is where I need to get better? But add to that as well and offer up, this is my weakness, but this is what I've been trying to do to get better, because that's the kind of employee that I would want to hire, is someone who is self-aware enough to go, okay, here's where I'm weak, but here's how I'm trying to get better, because that's what I want in employees: constant improvement, constant striving to be better at what we're doing. I will completely accept and recognize that you have a weakness, but I also want to know that we're trying to get better. So now on to number 8. Tell me about a time when, and fill in with situations relevant to the position. For instance, tell me about when you had to take initiative, you had to deal with a difficult customer, you had to respond to a crisis, you had to give difficult feedback to an employee. You get the idea, and it kind of goes back to number 6. Know what's on your resume, and have a lot of great stories that you can get in there. Again, everybody loves a story. And if you can, build it in and, customize the story, you can certainly draw your interviewers into it and come out looking like a rock star, basically. Number 9, what salary range are you looking for? And this is a tricky question, because nobody wants to go in there and say what they're worth, because they're afraid that they'll look too cocky. But if you go into a job that the average pay in that region is $50,000, and you say $100,000 with no experience, they're going to look at you and go, this guy has no idea about this job. He doesn't know what he's worth. If you go in there and say $25,000, they're going to think the same thing. They're going to go, this guy has no clue what the responsibilities are. I mean, he thinks he's just going to avoid the stress of this and everything for a $25,000 job. He has no clue. So you've got to be aware of, and you can go to the Department of Labor's sites, look at the occupational handbook for that region, and look at, what are the average salaries for things. Do your research and know what the average salary is, and put what you're worth. It's not lying, it's not bragging if it's true. If you have 10 years of experience and the average salary is $50,000 and you've just taken a class to improve your skills, you're probably worth more than $50,000. If this is your first job straight out of school and you have no experience and you're looking to get into the field, probably worth less than $50,000. But don't lowball it so much that people think you have no clue, and don't overestimate your skills so much that people can't afford you and are going to look for a less expensive option a viable option for themselves. And number 10, and this is a big one for them, what questions do you have for me? Always, always, always have questions for the interviewer. And I'll give you a range of some very general questions that you can ask. But when you ask questions of the interviewer, what you are doing is you're showing that you actually have interest in working there. It's not just a job that you'll bounce from, but you're interested in working there, finding the right fit where you can succeed and you'll be there long term. Because that's when they start getting that ROI, that return on investment from you. The longer you stay, the more valuable you are to the company. So the best job interviews aren't one-sided interrogations, but rather two-way conversations designed to let both sides figure out if they'd be a good fit. And since your goal shouldn't be just to get a job offer, but to land in a position in which you'll thrive and in an environment that you won't dread going to every day as you come to work, you should be interviewing the interviewer right back. Engage them in that discussion about the job. Don't let it be them just controlling and asking questions and you robotically answering. Show some interest, show some passion, and be curious about, okay, is this the right fit for me? Again, that face-to-face interview is not them interviewing you. It's both of you interviewing each other to make sure both of you are the right fit for each other. So hiring managers encounter a lot of candidates who don't have many or even any questions when they ask what they can answer for them. So while this isn't fatal, a lot of people understand nerves. Asking the right questions does show a level of thoughtfulness and engagement. After all, your interviewer wants to know that you're interested in the details of the job, the department you'll be working in, your prospective supervisor's management style, and the culture of the organization. Otherwise, you risk signaling that you're either not that interested or just haven't thought very much about it. So here are 10 questions to consider asking in general about the place you're going to be working. Why is this position open? If they fired the last guy because he was stealing, okay, well, that's kind of clue for you that, okay, they're going to be looking at me pretty carefully to make sure I'm not doing this and I better be on the up and up. If the last guy retired after 35 years, well, they're probably going to be looking at you to fill long term and are going to have certain expectations of you, given the last guy was probably an expert at this. What are the biggest challenges or obstacles the person in this position will face? This is going to give you a yardstick about what to expect on the job that might be problems, that might trip you up, cost you the job in the future that you will need to be aware of. Can you describe a typical day or week in the position? This gives you an idea about what the routine is in the office. Is it going to be super fast paced and very condensed and you're going to be stressed? Or is it more laid back and you'll have plenty of time? What works best for your work style there? How will the success of the person in the position be measured? And this is an awesome question to ask because it's going to tell you, okay, here's what is expected of you day to day. And at the end of it, when we evaluate you and decide whether to keep you on as an employee, this is the things that we're going to be looking at. Thinking back to the person whom you've seen do this job best, what made their performance so outstanding? And again, another measuring stick for you to judge, okay, this is what a stellar employee is. If I want to be a stellar employee here, this is what I'll have to do. Am I capable of that? How would you describe the culture here? And again, that's just another question to see, is this the right place for you, your style, your personality? Would you thrive here? How would you describe your management style? Some people need that someone over their shoulder constantly going, do this, do this, do this. I can't handle that. I would die in a situation or in an environment like that. I don't like being micromanaged at all. I need a lot of freedom. And so if I ask this question and the manager's like, well, I certainly would check in with you every day and we'd go over a checklist of things, I probably would be very turned off about the job. I wouldn't feel that I would succeed in that position. Are there reservations you have about my fit for the position? Now, this is a great way to give yourself the chance to tackle any doubts they might have about you, as well as for you to consider whether those doubts might be reasonable and point to a bad fit. But just as you might not have any questions for them, sometimes the interviewers aren't as prepared either. And so you might ask that question and they'd be like, no, well, they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to actually go into the reservations because then they'd have to discuss it with you. It might lead to a lawsuit or something. So it's a very difficult question to ask. But if they're willing to actually answer it, it's actually a good question. If they're not willing to answer it, don't linger on it. Jump into some of these other questions that might give you some clues from that. But if they are willing to answer it, it's a good way for you to be able to rebut it right there face to face. So for example, they say, well, we're really worried about your lack of experience on this particular software program. And you say, oh, I understand that. And I forgot to mention that I have registered for a workshop to improve my skills on this because I realize that's one of my weaknesses. Something along those lines to demonstrate again that you've identified it yourself as a weakness, you're aware, and that you're working on it. When do you expect to make a hiring decision? 99% of companies, and this is where I always feel like they're being unprofessional in my opinion, will say, okay, nice seeing you. We'll give you a call as soon as we know. And that's the last you actually hear from them. So you're sitting around a month later thinking this is your dream job. You're not applying anywhere else because you think, God, I'm going to get that call any day. And then they just never call. So it's nice to have a time frame here and a timeline to realize, okay, they said 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. I haven't heard from them. Maybe follow up with them just to be sure. And now you know you're not bugging them because they did say 2 weeks. And then if it didn't work out for you in this case, you now can move on without hanging on. Okay, if I accept something else, is this going to become open and now I'm stuck? So this is a good question to ask to just give you that timeline. So preparing for the interview, once you know the questions that are going to be asked, you kind of have a chance to actually get in there and prepare a little bit better and rehearse those things. Practice in front of the mirror. Rehearse your answers. And remember, rehearse your answers out loud. It's one thing to know what you're going to say in your head. It's another to actually hear yourself say the words. Nerves do funny things to people's behavior. And the more nervous you are, which is completely normal, don't get me wrong, but the more weird stuff you do, like tapping your foot or clicking your pin, those things I went over yesterday, getting, really weird, sweaty palms and rubbing your hands together, people who rock back and forth out of nerves, they don't even know they're doing it, but they are doing it. And they answer their questions. And sometimes when they're real nervous, they'll be like, tell me about yourself. Well, when I was 16, I was in high school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school, but I knew I didn't want to go to college, and I knew I didn't want to be a teacher or a truck driver and so I'm talking a mile a minute. That's one of my nervous tics. When I'm nervous, I talk very fast. And so you want to be able to hear yourself so that you recognize those tics, because in your head, you sound perfect. I mean, when you're just thinking about it, it sounds perfect. But when you're actually saying it out loud, that's what you need to hear back. And just, again, rehearse those answers, saying them over and over until they fly off your tongue automatically. The more you practice, the better you'll get and the more comfortable you'll feel. And most importantly, if you do this, you're going to see a significant improvement in your interview experience. It'll feel more like a stage production than a nervous situation. And again, record yourself. Set up your iPhone so you can record yourself. Get a buddy to help you with it, to act as the interviewer. Go over those questions I said would be the 10 most likely questions asked in an interview, and then just rehearse them over and over so that you're getting more comfortable with the answer each time. Now, every job seeker by now should know that there isn't much time to make a positive impression during an interview. But have you ever stopped to consider how short your window of opportunity actually is? According to a survey from Robert Half International, it may be 10 minutes or less. 60% of human resources managers polled said they form a positive or negative opinion of candidates within 10 minutes. Some make impressions even more quickly. 18% of respondents said they need just 5 minutes to draw conclusions about an interviewee. And a lot of people have even said that HR people want to be professional, but a lot of interviewers have said it takes them about a minute. So that you really don't have a very big window to make a positive impression. So what can you do to make that good impression then that they will leave with? First, arrive on time. And although no one tries to be late, it's easy to find yourself scrambling around on the morning of your interview as the meeting time draws closer. One way to ensure you're not late is to aim to arrive half an hour early. You'll give yourself some leeway in case traffic is worse than expected, or you get lost, or you have a tire blowout. I actually had that happen once on the way to an interview. I had to call them and say, listen, I'm going to be a little bit late. I just had a tire blowout. But you don't want people thinking that this is how you're going to be regularly on the job. So apologize profusely. But certainly if you try to be I wasn't as late as I could have been if I was on time, because I had that half-hour leeway. So I was only about 15 minutes late. That's a lot more realistic than a couple hours late. If you don't know the area and you're relying on Google to give you directions and they're wrong or they take you on a slower route, you have that extra half-hour padding in there. You get there, you're sweaty, you just changed a freaking tire, then that extra padding of time allows you to go to the restroom, splash some water on your face, freshen up a little bit, adjust your tie or your outfit or whatever you have to do. If you find you have time to spare, everything goes perfectly and you get there a half hour early, use it to review your resume. Check your appearance in the restroom. Make sure your cell phone's been turned off before stepping into the employer's office. And show up 5 to 10 minutes before the interview is scheduled to start to prove that you're punctual. So, if you get there a half hour early because everything went perfectly, sit in your car, pump the AC unless it's winter, and then just turn off the car, maybe turn on the radio. But you don't want it to be so hot in the car that you're sweating, your makeup's running, you're going in there all red-faced, beads of sweat on your face, because the people think, oh my God, this guy cannot handle social pressure at all, and he's going to flip out at work. So just want to give that calm, peaceful demeanor that you're confident in yourself as you go in. So let the cool air kind of evaporate some of that nervous sweat on you before you go in, and don't let it ruin your makeup or anything like that. Then about 5 to 10 minutes before the time of the actual interview, that's when you show yourself up in the lobby or wherever, just to, and sit down. Don't put on headphones or do anything. Just sit there patiently and wait the few minutes and look professional before they come out and get you. Bring reinforcements. That does not mean your mother. Okay, I actually had 2 interviews where someone brought their mother with them, and the mother thought that they were going to sit in the interview with us. I mean, what kind of person am I going to hire? Their mother has to come with them to the job interview. Needless to say, those people didn't get the job. And I've heard lots of stories about people like that bring their mother, or their mother calls for them or something. No, you're an adult now. It's time to act without mommy, all right? So when I say bring reinforcements, I don't mean bring family members and friends to help bolster you up and speak for you. What I mean is bring extra copies of your resume, work samples you submitted or were asked to provide. Also prepare a list of references in case the interviewer requests this information. You have it right there. That, right there, that looks stellar because you already have it prepared. You're on the ball, man. That's the kind of employee I'm looking for. And compiling this document ahead of time is a good way to show you're prepared. Also pack a notepad and pen before heading out the door. During the interview, jot down key points about the job or company. And again, especially my pin clicking friends that I talked about yesterday in the interview, or the people who are rocking and everything, what's a good way to control your nerves during those situations and do that is to take notes. Now, you might not have anything to take notes on, but look like you're taking notes. Look interested, make eye contact, nod every now and then, acknowledge what they're saying, and write something down. Some people doodle artwork. I have a bad habit as a historian. I try to remember all the presidents in order, and I'll end up writing a list of the presidents while I'm sitting there. That's how I doodle as a historian. But certainly, do something. By doing that with your hand, that allows your nerves or your body to focus a lot of that nervous energy on something that actually looks professional, even if you're not really taking notes on what they're saying. Most of the time, they can't peer over and read what you're writing anyway. But it is a good opportunity to focus on what they are saying and record some notes about it yourself. Particularly, the first thing you want to write down is the names and positions of everybody on the interview committee, be it 1 person or 10 people. Because professionally, later on, you're going to want to be able to refer to these people, if for no other reason than to send them a thank you note. Excuse me for a second. All this talking makes my throat dry. So pack a notepad and pen before heading out the door, and during the interview, jot down key points about the job or company. And these details will come in handy when crafting a thank you note to the hiring manager and when evaluating the job if it's offered to you. Because remember, you're interviewing them as well to make sure it's a good fit. And if the interview makes you nervous, nothing says you have to accept the job if they offer it to you. Shake hands like you mean it. And this is where I wish I had a partner so I could show you a proper handshake. Gentlemen, I think, are more prone to understand this than ladies, no offense. But ladies, are taught to be somewhat dainty and the Queen of England. And so normally ladies will shake your hand and they grasp the top part of your hand like this. And that's not a very professional handshake. And you'd be surprised how much impressive a good handshake is within that first minute there when people are making the decision. What you want to do in a good handshake is you want to interlock the palms and the thumbs. Firm, but don't try to squeeze each other out. Men are more used to this because in a way it's kind of an animal show of dominance. Can you give that handshake that makes the other guy wince and try to pull away, and that shows that you're a dominant guy. Mr. Venters, is fond of, saying, oh, this is how I shake a hand to prove and get the other guy. I don't know if that's completely necessary in today's day and age. If you try to go in there and prove you're dominant to the guy interviewing you, your boss, why would I hire you? You're going to never listen to me. And if your boss is doing that to you, what kind of manager is he going to be to you when he does that? So just, something, you interlock the thumbs, a firm handshake. You're not trying to squeeze and break the other person's hand. And ladies, we're not expecting you to, but certainly something in there, and just, a firm squeeze, much like if you were grabbing an apple off a shelf. That's about how firm it should be, or a jar or anything. If you're grabbing something off a shelf. So it sounds cliched, but a firm, confident handshake is important. In a career builder survey, more than 1/4 of hiring managers say a weak handshake is a mark against potential hires. And not sure if your handshake passes muster, practice with a friend ahead of time. Another tip, and this is very psychological, smile. Most people, if you smile at them, instinctually, they will smile back at you. And smiling actually triggers certain hormones. When you use those muscles in your face to smile, actually triggers certain hormones which make people feel better. So if you go in and smile and shake their hand and they're smiling back, they're actually feeling good, and they're going to associate that feeling not with, oh, hormones are shooting through my body. They're going to associate it with you. Being around you makes them feel good. And who wouldn't want to hire someone to work with that they're around every day that doesn't make them feel good? So, it's going to reaffirm the self-assured attitude you're trying to convey. Don't skip the small talk. I have to interview 20 people today. I get 15 minutes with each one. By the end of the day and hearing all their life stories, what am I going to remember? Not a lot. I'm not going to remember who worked where or anything. What I'm going to base it on is just this general feeling of, okay, this is, the type of person that I think will fit in well here and will do the job. Probably wouldn't have invited you to the interview if I didn't think you were already going to fit the job. So what you have to do as part of this sales thing is make a connection with them that they'll remember you by. So you walk in the office and they have their diploma on the wall, and the diploma says something about going to, Johns Hopkins University. And you say, I had a cousin who went there. I visited the campus. It's great. All of a sudden, I'm making a connection with you. And so don't avoid this small talk. It's one of the best ways to build immediate rapport with a potential employer and make that connection. And make a point to comment about the traffic, the weather, or your weekend plans. But whatever you do, dear God, don't make any jokes, particularly racial or religious jokes, because you never know. You're going to make a joke about Jews, and this guy's Jewish, or you're going to make a Polak joke. This guy's Polish. So don't ever get engaged in things like that. A huge trap, because people will certainly, worry about lawsuits bringing you in if that's the kind of humor you have, or don't go into the guy, oh, it's a guy interviewing me, I'm going to comment on how attractive the receptionist is. Huge no-nos on those things. Be sure you don't ramble on. As the name implies, small talk should take up only a little of the total conversation. Look to the hiring manager for cues that it's time to talk business. Don't just keep rambling on and telling a story that has no relationship to the interview itself. As small talk is just small talk. Quick one-sentence reactions and responses is all it is. One last thing to finish this slide, assess your surroundings. Once you're seated in the interview room, take a moment to survey your surroundings, especially if you're meeting in the hiring manager's office. And this is what I meant by you see the diploma or the degree or certificate on the wall. That's assessing your surroundings. You see pictures of them vacationing on the beach or something. So photos, diplomas, mementos, tchotchkes, little collectibles, other items can tell you a lot about the person on the other side of the desk. You may learn of shared interests or experiences that you can mention to establish a more lasting connection. For example, oh, I see you went to Penn State University as well. I bet you miss Tony's Pizza as much as I do. Something along those lines where I remember this guy because he went to my university. Something like that that will make you memorable in there. So I'm not going to be able to finish up this whole presentation today. I will finish it up tomorrow in a recorded format, as well as move on to other ways to prepare yourself for the interview, particularly in forms of intelligence research, meaning they're going to go out there and they're going to look at what they can find out about you. You should be going out there and looking at what you can find out about them and how to prepare for those searches. So that's what we'll kind of get into tomorrow. Do you guys have any questions for me today in regards to any of this? Okay, well then hopefully I'll see you live again Thursday, again tomorrow, same time. It will just be a recorded presentation instead of a live presentation. So guys, have a good day. I hope everything's going good for you and that you don't need anything. If you do, as always, feel free to contact me. I'll do my best to take care of you. Otherwise, have a good day, guys.